Okay, Happy New Year to all, and welcome brothers and sisters in the Dhamma to our monthly Sutta class with Brother Benny. Please note that this session will be recorded. A gentle reminder about Zoom ethics. Three things that I would like to highlight is please mute yourself. This is to minimize the background noise. Please turn on your video. It makes the speaker's job easier to communicate. And make sure your display name is the name you want us to address you by. Okay, let's start by paying homage to the Buddha, take the three refuge, and observe the 5 precepts. Let us prepare ourselves by relaxing the body and calm our minds, free ourselves from distraction, and be mindful of the present moment. Let's begin by putting our hands together. Buddham Pujami, Dhammam Pujami, Sangham Pujami. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami. Tutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami. Tutiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami. Tutiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. Tutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami. Adinadana veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami. Kamesu miccācara veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami. Musavada veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami. Surameraya maccappamadatthana veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. A very warm welcome to everyone to another Sutta studies with Brother Benny. Today we will be studying the Cunda Sutta from the Sutta Nipata. A brief introduction to our speaker. Brother Benny has been a student of Buddhism for many years and is grateful for the teachings he received from many compassionate teachers. As such, he helps various Buddhist organizations with their outreach program, including sharing his understanding of the Dhamma and editing Buddhist publications. He currently assists the Young Buddhist Association of Malaysia with his non-sectarian Buddhist journal, Eastern Horizon, and has edited 9 books on Buddhism. He is also the editorial consultant and contributor to the Religious and Belief volume of the Encyclopedia of Malaysia, and his writings have appeared in the Journal of Malaysian branch of the Royal Asiatic Society, Kajian Malaysia, and in Nurturing Child and Adolescent Spirituality, Perspective from the World Religious Tradition, published in the US. Brother Benny studied in both University Science Malaysia and University of Malaya, where he graduated with a Bachelor of Arts Honours in Education and Masters of Public Administration, respectively. He is currently employed as a Senior VP of a multinational corporation, as well as a Director of some related companies in Malaysia and the United Kingdom. Welcome, Brother Benny, and the mic is yours.
Okay, thanks. Let me just share some screen. Right, can you see it? Can you see the slide? Can, huh?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Yes, can see.
yeah, good afternoon and also Happy New Year, right? So it's both the Happy New Year, which has just passed, as well as the coming Chinese New Year, right?
Happy.
Okay, right. So today we're going to continue our selection of discourses from the Sutta Nipata. So far, I think we have covered two. We have covered the 𝓀𝓾𝓽𝓪 Sutta, the snake serpent Sutta. We have also talked about Dhamma Sutta, the previous. So today we're going to, in the series, we're going to jump the Kaggavisana Sutta and the Kasibara-Vajja Sutta, and then we're going to look at the Cunda Sutta. So this is called the Discourse to Cunda, right? Now, before I move into this, maybe just a little bit on this person, Cunda himself. I think many of you are familiar that this name is actually quite a well-known name in the Buddhist teachings, right? And if you remember in the final discourse in the Maha Parinibbana Sutta, we also have the name Cunda, right? So it's the same Cunda, right? So this is the same Cunda who actually offered the Buddha sweet rice and cakes, and then this particular food called the 𝓀𝓾𝓽𝓪 Yeah, 𝓀𝓾𝓽𝓪. Remember that word? So 𝓀𝓾𝓽 means pig, pig, right? And then the 𝓼𝓵 means something that's soft and tender. So there's been a lot of debates about what actually was this final meal that the Cunda offered the Buddha. All right. Some would say, oh, actually they offered the Buddha a tender pork, right, in his final meal. And then some would say, oh, it's food which the pig like to eat. And then they refer it to mushrooms or some truffle. So what has happened over the generations is that those who are strictly vegetarian, right, would then argue on the basis that, well, actually this 𝓀𝓾𝓽𝓪 was actually a type of mushroom, because you know, and not pork, right? But those who tends to think that, well, that the Buddha has no special instruction on meat eating, other than a few like the 𝓀𝓵𝓱 Sutta, so it could possibly be pork. But that's a debate that's been going on. So, but basically, what is important is that it was mentioned this particular dish was kind of you can say it was polluted, and then the Buddha knew that whoever ate it would have diarrhea, would even die from, would even die from food poisoning. So the sutta says that then the Buddha told Cunda to go in after serving this food to the Buddha, but not to serve it to the other monks. And after serving this food, he is to put it into a kind of a pit, bury it under a pit, so that nobody else would be able to eat it, right? And then it is said that the Buddha subsequently had diarrhea and stomach problems. Okay, so and what is also important is that the Buddha then told Ananda to go and inform Cunda not to feel remorse, because whoever offers the Buddha his final meal, that is a very meritorious action. Because Cunda did not mean to actually offer any poison food to the Buddha. Right? So I think that's the story many of you are familiar with, right? You can read that in the suttas. Okay, so that's the Cunda mention, right? Which we will also look at in today's discourse. Now, this word Cunda, or this person Cunda, also appears in 2 or 3 other discourses. So in case when you look at the Pali canon, you may find that, oh, this is another Cunda Sutta, but it's not from the Sutta Nipata. All right, so the other Cunda is found in the book of gradual saying, Anguttara Nikaya, book of 646, where a monk by the name of Cunda actually told the assembly of monks there not to quarrel, right? Because you have got a group of so-called meditation monks, and then you got another group of scholarly monks. So the meditation monks would then ridicule the scholarly monks, and then the scholarly monks would ridicule the meditation monks, right? If you remember, some years back, we also discussed this Cunda Sutta, right, in Setia, right? So this is Sutta 6.46. Right, so that's another occasion where you find the word Cunda was mentioned. And then the other Cunda Sutta is also in the Anguttara Nikaya. So in case you come across this is in Anguttara Nikaya 10.176. So if you Google that particular discourse, you find that in this discourse, the Buddha taught Cunda the 10 purifications. And the 10 purifications are primarily the 10 unwholesome actions and the 10 wholesome actions, 3 through body, 4 through speech, and 3 through mind. So the Buddha explained to Cunda what is meant by real purification, when you have purification of the body, purification of the speech, and purification of the mind. So that's another Cunda. All right. Then the third one is in the Samyutta Nikaya. This is Sutta 47.14. If you want to make reference, 47.14. This is actually the Cunda, a kind of an assistant to Ananda, and this was at a period not long after Sariputta and Moggallana had passed away. So this happened at Ukachela, right? So then Cunda and Ananda came to see the Buddha. So if you remember this discourse where the Buddha praised both Sariputta and Moggallana highly, and even the Buddha mentioned something like, oh, Sariputta is no more here, Moggallana is no more here. So even the Buddha can sense a kind of feeling of emptiness because of their absence. Okay, so there are many occasions where you have this Cunda being mentioned. All right. Again, scholars have debated whether is it the same Cunda or is it a different Cunda. But today's the discourse that we're going to look at in Sutta Nipata 1.5, apparently from the commentaries, is the same Cunda that offered the last meal to the Buddha. All right. So that's a little background on who this Cunda was. Right. Okay. So let's move on. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So the 4 reliance is just to remind us. Remember, listen to the word of the Buddha. Again, contemplate on the meaning, not just the provisional meaning, but the definitive meaning. And the most important thing at the end of it, how we're able to apply what we have heard in our everyday practice. Okay, so the 4 reliances. Okay, so let me give you a little background on this particular discourse. If you look at the discourse itself, which I sent to you, the PDF, it doesn't have the background, right? So I've taken this from the commentaries. So this is the commentary, so to give you a kind of a background, yeah? So the background is, on one occasion, the Buddha was wandering on tour among the Malas with a large sangha of bhikkhus when he arrived at Pava. Now, Pava is actually the town that's on the way to Kushinara. So from here, you know that this was towards the last few weeks or last few months of the Buddhas before he passed away, right? So there, the Blessed One dwelled at Pava in the mangrove grove of Cunda, the smith's son. So Cunda is known as the blacksmith, right? Then in the morning, the Blessed One dressed, took his bowl and robe, and together with his sangha of bhikkhus went to the residence of Cunda. All right. So we know from here that even during the time of the Buddha, it is common for the monks and even the Buddha himself to go to the home of lay people for dana, right? Something that I think which has been practiced even till today. So the Buddha then sat down on a seat prepared for him. Now, when the Blessed One and then when the Buddha and his monks were seated, Cunda, while serving lunch, presented the monks with golden vessels to receive the curries and sauces. That means alms bowl, right? So, those days they don't have plates, right? So they give you golden vessels. So Cunda must be quite a wealthy person. They offer golden vessel. And we know, so at that time, they take a lot of curries and also a lot of sauces, right? Just like Indians today, right? Now, since the training rule had not yet been laid down, some bhikkhus accepted the golden vessels while others did not. But the Blessed One had only one vessel. So his stone alms bowl for the Buddha to not accept the second vessel, right? So as you would also know, the Vinaya, the training rules, they were developed or they were established through the years, all right? So it wasn't a case that when the Buddha became enlightened, he sat down, spent the next 1 week jotting down what are the rules and you want to give the monks. So it didn't happen in that way. So all the rules came about as the as the sasana progress. Okay. So this is just the background. We have not come to the main crux of the sutta yet. Now, this is interesting, right? A certain this is translated as evil bhikkhu, right? I've used Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, so I've not changed that. So a certain evil bhikkhu took the precious golden vessel that he had received from the meal and put it into his own bag, intent on stealing it. So here you find, even during the Buddha's times, you also got the bad monks. So you not only have improper monks during today, even during the Buddha's time, right in the midst when the Buddha was there. Right? So you have this particular monk here. Now, when Cunda had finished serving the meal, he bowed down to the Blessed One. Now, Cunda saw this bhikkhu who took that golden vessel and tried to steal it by putting it in his bag. But out of respect for the Buddha and the elders means the monks, right? Elders, just as the word Theravada, the word Thera means elders, right? So Theravada means the way of the elders, right? So, and the elders, he acted as if he had not seen him and did not say anything, right? So what happened is Cunda actually saw this monk taking that or putting that golden vessel into his bag, but with the intent of stealing it, right? But then Cunda did not want to kind of make an issue of it, out of respect for the Buddha. So he acted like he had not seen anything. Then what happened? Then Cunda made a remark, or he thought, may those of wrong view not get a chance to speak, right? Wishing to know, are only those possessed or restrained to be considered ascetics, or are those unrestrained like him also to be considered an ascetic? He therefore approached the Buddha in the evening and said, I asked the Muni, right? So here come to the crux of the sutta, where Cunda asked the Buddha this question: who are those ascetics? Who actually qualify to be ascetics? Are only those possessed of restraint? Those who are restrained, are they considered ascetics? Or those who are unrestrained, like him? Like him, that means Cunda is saying that he is unrestrained. So is he also considered an ascetic? All right, but here we all know that the Buddha was actually making an indirect reference to the monk who stole that golden vessel and put it in his bag. All right, so here the Buddha, Cunda actually wanted to ask the Buddha, who actually would you consider as an ascetic? Right? Who falls into the category of an ascetic? So this is where this discourse is all about. Then he said, I asked the Muni. Okay, so Muni is a term which, especially in the old part of the scriptures, like in the Sutta Nipata, then you find the word Muni being used. The Muni, I think I did mention to you early on, but anyway, maybe I will just explain that again in a short while. So here, let me look at the first verse. All right, let me explain what is Muni first. Yeah. Cunda dismissed, so he asked the Buddha. So that's the first verse. Okay, I asked the Muni. So later we see who is the Muni. One of abundant wisdom. Okay, the Buddha, Lord of the Dhamma, rid of craving, supreme among bipeds, most excellent of trainers. How many ascetics are there in this world? Please tell me. Correct. So there are a lot of words here which has got deep meaning, and we could spend one whole session just talking about each of those words. Like for example, the word Muni, and then what is meant by abundant wisdom. So it is said that the Buddha is, for example, the word Buddha from the word Buddhi means awaken. He's awakened to wisdom. Right. So wisdom is also another title for the Buddha. Right. And then he's the Buddha, the Lord of the Dhamma. He's rid of craving. All right, we will see what we mean by craving here. He's supreme, that means among bipeds. You know what are bipeds? Two-legged, right? Those who have walk on two legs, right? Bipeds. He's most excellent of trainers, right? You know, in many puja, we recite the 9 qualities of the Buddha, right? So one of the 9 qualities is that he's the teacher of gods and men. Remember? Satta Deva Manusanam. Right? He's a teacher of gods. I mean, he can train gods, he can train men. So he's an excellent trainer in that sense, right? So he asks the Buddha, how many ascetics are there in the world? Please tell me. Okay, so that's the first verse. So if you remember, as I mentioned when we started this discourse, this program on the Sutta Nipata, most of the discourses in the Sutta Nipata comes in verses, right? Unlike, say, in the Majjhima Nikaya, which are mainly in prose. Okay, so let's look at this. So what is before we look at the Buddha's reply, let's look at some of these words. Muni. So who is a Muni? All right, so the term Muni means a sage or a wise person. So this is a title given to Gautama Buddha. Now, if he was born among the tribe of the Sakyas, right? You remember this word Sakya? So there were different tribes during the time of the Buddha. So the tribe that Siddhartha Gautama belongs to is called the Sakya tribes. And then the wife Yashodhara, so that belongs to another tribe, right? That's called the Koliyas, if you remember, right? So he belongs to the Sakyas. So because he belongs to the Sakyas, they call him the sage of the Sakyas, Sakya Muni. So this word Sakya Muni, not so common in Theravada Buddhism, especially modern Theravada Buddhism, but in Tibetan Buddhism, in Chinese Mahayana Buddhism, they tend to use a lot of this word Sakya Muni, Sakya Muni, right? So they always call the Buddha, they refer to the Buddha as Sakya Muni. That means the sage, the wise man of the Sakyas. Now, this word can also be applied by the Buddha to any person attaining perfection in self-restraint and insight. So the word is capable of many-sided application and of course occurs frequently in the oldest poetic anthologies. For example, the Muni Sutta. So if you're interested, it's the same Sutta Nipata. You can also read the Muni Sutta. First section, Sutta number 12. Right, so on the Muni Sutta, but again, I'm sure if you're familiar with the Pali Canon, you find that this word Muni becomes less frequently used in the other Nikayas, right? But in the oldest part of the Nikayas, it is very, very common. So you get the Muni Sutta. Right? So next time you hear the word Muni, then you know it means a wise person. Now, the other word is cravings, right? He says the rid of craving. So the Buddha has got rid of craving. So we can have a whole session to talk about craving. Craving in Pali is tanha. Craving, this word occurs in different ways. For example, in the dependent origination, if you remember the 12 spokes in the dependent origination. So what causes craving? All right, in the formula there, it says Vedana Pachaya Tanha, isn't it? So feelings, condition, cravings, Tanha. So Vedana Pachaya Tanha. And then because of cravings, it conditions grasping, Upadana. Right? So the word Tanha, it actually means thirst. Thirst. For example, thirsty is something that we can never have enough. Like for example, we are thirsty, we drink water. All right. Can you just drink water once and forever your thirst is quenched? You can't, right? So eventually at some stage, you need to come back to drink water. So thirst in that sense. Okay. So when one has got wrong views about things, so that thirst turns into strong attachment. Right? So like upadana, isn't it the word we say upadana? You see the word upa means very, very high level, very strong. Upadana, upadana. From the word dana, dana means giving, right? So adana means taking. So highest, very high strength, a very strong urge to continue to want something, to take something rather than to give. So upadana. You know the word dana, right? Dana means to give. So upadana, right? So from that word there, you know what it signifies. So, but today we're not going to talk about the 12 parts of the dependent origination. We're not going to talk about Vedana, Pachaya, tanha, pachaya, upadana, right? So maybe another session, but you know, in that context, right? So cravings appears in that context. So in the context of birth and rebirth, all right? So it is the birth and rebirth context. Now, the other way of explaining the cravings, which is a very popular form, is the three forms of craving. One is craving for sense pleasures, right? Which is, I think, which is easily understood. We crave for sense pleasures through our six senses, isn't it? Through our body, through our speech, through our mind, through our, through our nose, through our touch, through our hearing, through our, we want to hear nice music, we want to see nice sights, taste good food, good taste. So all our senses. So that is that craving for sense pleasures. Right? So that falls under one aspect. Okay. Now, of course, here the Buddha is not saying that we should not have craving for sense pleasures. The problem, when you have craving for sense pleasures, it can never be satisfied. Because it can never be satisfied, we can never be happy. All right. So that's the whole crux of it. So it is more, how do we understand sense pleasures? Now, the other one that is more subtle is what is called craving for existence. This is bhava tanha. Bhava is life. All right. So this is, for example, believing in eternity. Like many people in the world today believe that when they die, they will continue to live forever and ever. And even some people believe that when they are born as a deva, they will live forever. But the Buddhist context is even the devas, they do not live forever. Even the brahmas, they don't live forever. So craving for existence, for eternal existence, that itself, the Buddha said, is a form of wrong views. Okay. And then the other one is a craving for non-existence. Non-existence is just the reverse, especially when someone is very unhappy, very depressed. Some people want to commit suicide. So they thought that by committing suicide, and that's the end of all their suffering, end of all their craving. So Buddha says, because that itself is also a form of craving. Wanting to commit suicide is also a form of craving. But because of that, it will generate a new life, right? If you go back to the context of the 12 spokes in the dependent origination. Okay, so these three words here, kama tanha. Please take note that this kama is K-A-M-A. It's not K-A-M-M-A. Do you notice that? It's not a typo error. So this kama, where do you find this word? This afternoon, you recited the 5 precepts, right? Remember the third precept? Third precept in Pali is kamesu michachara viramatni sikkhapadang samadhiyami, right? So the kamesu, the kama. So is that same term there, right? The kamesu from the word kama, right? Kama. So these are the three forms. So the Buddha have eradicated these three forms of craving. So when you have eradicated this form of craving, there's no more rebirth. That is why the Buddha says he has ended all rebirth. Okay, so these are the three forms of cravings. Now then we go to verse 2. You remember the first one, the first verse, Cunda asked the Buddha, how many types of ascetics, right? So here the Buddha replies. The Buddha says there are 4 kinds of ascetics. There's no fifth. I mean, there are only 4. Don't talk about 5 types. There are only 4 types. So been asked in person, right? So Cunda asked in person, right? So, right, those days, right? They see the Buddha in person. So they say, been asked in person, let me explain them to you. So the Buddha explains to Cunda. And who are the 4 types of ascetics? So the Buddha explained here. The first type is someone who is a conqueror of the path. Then the teacher of the path. One who lives on the path. One who defiles the path. Right, so remember 4 types of ascetics. Okay, so let's see what are these 4. Now, then here verse 3, Cunda. So when the Buddha says there are 4 types of ascetics, then because the Buddha didn't explain, right? So then Cunda asks again, whom do Buddhas call a conqueror of the path? How is one without equal as a shower of the path? Been asked, tell me who lives on the path, and explain to me the defiler of the path. So here Cunda is asking the Buddha again, tell me, you mentioned there are 4 tell me, who is a conqueror of the path, the first type of ascetic? Who is someone who is a shower of the path, someone who shows you the path? And then he said, thirdly, tell me, who is someone who lives on the path? And finally, tell me, who is the one who defiles the path or who abuses the path? Okay, so these are the four things. So it's pretty straightforward. Yeah. So let's see, what did the Buddha say? Okay, I've just summarized here, right? So the four are the conqueror, one who has destroyed all defilements on the path. So I'll just give a quick summary here. So the four classes of ascetics. So who is a conqueror? A conqueror is someone who has destroyed all defilements on the path. That means when you say that the Buddha is a conqueror, in the Thai classic, some of you may have remembered this. Many years ago, I think we invited the Venerable Suganda to give a talk on the Buddha as a world renouncer and a world conqueror. World renouncer and a world conqueror. Right? I think it's the world of King Rong in Thai classics, right? So here, a conqueror. Who is a conqueror? A conqueror is one who has destroyed all defilements. So the Buddha has destroyed all the defilements on the path. Okay, no more defilements, right? All of us have defilements. Okay, the Buddha has destroyed all defilements because he has conqueror. So he has conquered all defilements. Teacher, at the same time, he's also a teacher. Why? Because he teaches the path to others. So this is a unique quality of a Sammasambuddha, isn't it? The Arahants, for example, they may be enlightened, but they don't have the same ability or capability as a Buddha, as a Sammasambuddha, as a fully enlightened Buddha, to be able to teach the path. All right? So that's why just now I mentioned the Buddha in one of his nine virtues. When you recite the 9 qualities of the Buddha, one of it is Satta Deva Manusanam. Satta Deva Manusanam. That means he's a teacher of gods and men. So he teaches the gods, he teaches the men. Right? Men here means human beings, right? Okay. Now, so he's a teacher, one who teaches the path. Now, follower. Who is a follower? Now, a follower is one who is a trainee on the path. All right. Now, when we, for example, this afternoon, when we recite the 5 precepts, we observe the 5 precepts, we are actually telling ourselves that we undertake to be a trainee, isn't it? Right? Why? Because if you look at the Pali word that you recite, which I hope you know what you're reciting, when you say, for example, the first one, you say Panati Pata Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. The key word there is Sikkha. All right? Because you find the word Sikkha appearing in Adina Dana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. And likewise, Kame Sunichachara Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Right? Correct, right? Musa Wada Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. And Surai Meraya Majapama Dattana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. So that word Sikkha appears 5 times, isn't it? And that Sikkha means training. Right? A trainee, Sikkha, right? A Sikkha. So one is a trainee on the path. So always remember when we recite the 5 precepts, always remember that we undertake to put into practice, right? The Buddha's teachings, right? The 5 precepts are of no use to us if we don't put it into practice, isn't it? Right? So it's like at the beginning, you know, when His Holiness the Dalai Lama talks about the 4 reliances, all right? There's no point we are able to recite the 5 precepts, we are not able to practice it, right? And then what is the provisional meaning and what is the ultimate meaning of the precepts? Is that when we practice the precepts, we not only guard ourselves, self-restraint, but we also practice kindness and compassion to others, right? Because imagine if all of us practice our precepts, the world has got no fear of us, right? So that is looking at it in the ultimate sense. So we are a follower. That means one, we are a trainee on the path. Now, and then of course, the 5th one is the defiler, one who is immoral and has wrong views. Okay, So here, for example, you find that in this story, you got a monk in the midst of the Buddha's Sangha, and during when Cunda offers dana, maybe out of habit, he just put the vessel into his bag, right? So we do have people who are like that. So one who is immoral and has wrong views, so that's called defilement. So I'm just giving you an overall summary of the four classes of ascetics which the Buddha mentions in the Cunda Sutta, right? Okay, let's see. Let's pick each one of it. Yeah. So verse 4. Okay. Then the Buddha says, one who has crossed over perplexity, free of inner doubts, delighted with Nibbana, without any greed, the guide of this world, together with his devas, the Buddhas call the impartial one a conqueror of the past. Right? So here he has crossed over perplexity. This word crossing over, all right, is a very common usage in the Buddhist teachings. Right? If those of you who were present when we discussed the 𝓀𝓲𝓽𝓪 Sutta, remember the flood, crossing the flood, right? When the young Deva asked the Buddha, how do you cross the flood? Right? So he has crossed over perplexity. So you find about that. And then in the, for example, one of the definitions of Nibbana is that we have crossed over to the other shore. We have crossed over to the other shore. What is the other shore? That means this shore of samsara, we have crossed over to the other shore. So cross over. And cross over perplexity. Perplexity means confusion, wrong views. All right. So doubt, for example. All right. In the traditional Buddhist teachings, it is said that to be able to get a first stage of enlightenment, or what is called stream enterer or stream entry, Satipatthana, is you have no longer any doubts. No more doubts about the Buddha, about his teachings, about the Sangha. No more doubts. All right? And free of inner doubts. Okay. All right. So here, what are those inner doubts? Right? The inner doubts. So these inner doubts are, for example, in the 𝓀𝓵𝓪𝓼𝓵 Sutta, this is where the Buddha talks about the different stages of Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, and then the Arahant. So here you find that these are the defilements of the inner doubts, right? So at the stream enterer, you only eradicated your doubt, identity view, rites and rituals, right? Attachment to rites and rituals. Then once you reach one's returner, you only weaken sense desires and ill will. You notice the word is weaken. You have not eradicated. So which means a stream enterer still got sense desires, still got ill will, right? But not in a very gross form. Not in a very gross form, very subtle, but still there. It's only when he reached the third stage, when he has eradicated sensual desires and ill will. Okay? It's a non-returner. But there's still others, right? Like, for example, attachment to form, attachment to formless realms. Like some people, when they do meditation and the jhanas, some they reach such high states of jhanas, they get very attached to those jhana states. All right, so that's itself is still an attachment to form. All right, attachment to formlessness, arupa jhanas, right? Attachment to formlessness. So the Buddha mentioned this. It's only when the person reached the stage of arahantship. Okay, conceit. Conceit, Pali word is mana. So this is that little conceit, right? That it is still there, right? But it's so subtle that sometimes we are not aware of it. We're not aware of it, right? Restlessness and of course ignorance. Okay. Now details, of course, you can read the 𝓀𝓵𝓪𝓼𝓵 Sutta, right? I think the details are all there. So I hope you will make reference to that. Yeah. Okay. So the Buddha is an arahant. So this has got reference to, that means he has crossed over perplexity. He has eradicated doubts. He's free of inner doubts. So all those inner doubts, even like conceit, which is so subtle, he has overcome it. Restlessness and ignorance. Okay. So he's delighted with Nibbana. So Nibbana is always, because Nibbana is the unconditioned, it's very difficult to explain in words. So the Buddha used a lot of similes, All right. Sometimes he used the simile as an island for Nibbana. Sometimes he would say, oh, it's the other shore. Sometimes he would use a simile like Nibbana is the cool cave. All right. Or sometimes he would say Nibbana is the absence of greed, is the absence of hatred, is the absence of ignorance. Or sometimes the Buddha uses the word explain Nibbana in a So Nibbana can be explained both in its positive as well as in the negative connotation, in that sense. Why? Because it's beyond words. Okay? So here it says the Buddha is also the guide of this world together with his devas. So the Buddha also teach the devas. He also taught, for example, the Mangala Sutta, the Ratana Sutta, so many other suttas. And I think there's a whole section in the Samyutta Nikaya called the Deva Samyutta. If you look at the Samyutta Nikaya, there's a whole section called Deva Samyutta, where the Buddha actually taught the Devas. Right? So that's why he's said to be a kind of a teacher of gods and men. And the Buddhas call the impartial one a conqueror of the path. Now here you find that the word Buddhas, plural. So all Buddhas have the same characteristics. Right? The Buddhas call the impartial one a conqueror of the path. So they all have the same. Okay? So that's so please go through the 𝓀𝓲𝓽𝓪 Sutta. This is in the Samyutta Nikaya, right? For details. Now, verse 5. Then the Buddha says, one here who, having known the Supreme as Supreme, explains and analyzes the Dhamma right here. The Muni who has cut off doubt without impulse is the second bhikkhu, whom they call a teacher of the path. All right. So words like the second bhikkhu. So the first bhikkhu is the conqueror. So they're just using the word bhikkhu. Right. Now this word bhikkhu usually we translate as monk, right? Or in Sanskrit is bhikshu, right? So in Pali is bhikkhu. So usually we refer to a monk, right? But the word bhikkhu in for example in the Satipatthana Sutta, when the Buddha addresses the bhikkhus, well, many modern day commentators, including Bhante Analayo, Venerable Analayo, Bhikkhu Bodhi, they said that bhikkhu, when you read this, what do you call it, the Satipatthana Sutta is actually to refer to whoever is a practitioner. Whoever is a practitioner. Right? So not necessarily that the Buddha was addressing the monk, he's addressing the practitioner. So which means that the word bhikkhu in that sense can be gender neutral, can also be referred to a bhikkhuni. Okay, so whom they call a teacher of the path. Now, so what is Dhamma? Right? So here the word Dhamma, the Buddha says, one here who having known the Supreme as Supreme explains and analyzes the Dhamma right here. Now, there are six virtues of the Dhamma, right? I'm not going to go through with you. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo, right? Sanditiko, Akaliko, Ehipasiko, Opayaniko, Pachatang Veritabo Vinyuhiti. 6 qualities of the Dhamma, all right? So it's all there, okay? So here what we can say, what is Dhamma? Look at the word itself, what does it mean? Dhamma comes from the word dhariti. It means that which supports. So when the Buddha says, he who lives by the Dhamma is protected by the Dhamma. That means you live in accordance with the natural law which supports wholesomeness. Right? So that's Dhamma. So it's a natural law. Of course, the Dhamma can also means the Buddha's teachings. And the Dhamma can also means Nibbana. So when someone says, I take refuge in the Dhamma, that means I take refuge in Nibbana. I take refuge in the unconditioned. Right? In the Pali Abhidhamma, the Nibbana is regarded as the unconditioned. Right? Unconditioned. So we take refuge in that unconditioned. So that means the Dhamma. Now, here it says, well taught. So the teaching is not the speculative philosophy. but a universal law discovered by the Buddha when he became enlightened. So when we talk about the Dhamma, we say it is excellent in the beginning, it is excellent in the middle, and it is excellent in the end. So when you hear this word excellent in the beginning, excellent in the middle, excellent in the end, what it actually tells us is actually the Noble Eightfold Path. All right? Always remember Noble Eightfold Path. Because Noble Eightfold Path has got moral principles, it's got mind training, it's got wisdom. Okay? And sometimes the Noble Eightfold Path is depicted like a pagoda, which has got 3 sections: the apex, the middle portion, and then the base. So the base being the moral principles, right? Then the mind training, and then the apex forms the wisdom. Okay, so the Buddha's teaching is said to be well taught. Why is it well taught? Because when we practice it, then it brings us benefit from the beginning, in the middle, and then in the end. Okay. And then in the Vakali Sutta, the Buddha has got this phrase, "O Vakali, whoever sees the Dhamma sees me." Remember that famous saying? All right. So even though the Buddha may not be here with us, all right, physically the Buddha is not here, isn't it? Physically the Buddha passed away 2,600 over years. But the Dhamma, or the teachings, or the truth that the Buddha discovered is still there. So when you see the truth, when you perceive the truth, when you perceive the Dhamma, it's the same as you perceive the Buddha. So you see the Buddha there, all right? And how do we know this? The Buddha told this to Vakali, all right? So we know that this is possible. If you can see the Dhamma, you can see the Buddha. So those people who say, why pay respects to the Buddha? Why still listen to what the Buddha said? Because what the Buddha said is actually what we call the Buddha and Dhamma. Now, verse 6. So let's go on then. The one on the well-taught trail of the Dhamma who lives on the path, controlled and mindful, resorting to blameless ways of conduct, is the third bhikkhu, whom they call one living on the path. So now it's the third bhikkhu now. So here, bhikkhu is not any ordinary monk, right? It is, for example, someone who actually practice. So it could be, in this case, even a lay person in that sense. The one on the well-taught trail. What is a well-taught trail? Remember the well-taught? Remember I said here, but it's a well-taught, 𝓀𝓾𝓽𝓽𝓪, right? Excellent in the beginning, excellent in the middle, excellent in the end. Okay? So the one on a well-taught trail of the Dhamma, who lives on the path, controlled and mindful. What is control? That means self-restraint. How do we have self-restraint? We observe the precepts. All right, we observe the precepts by controlling, by self-restraint, right? And mindful, right? We also do the mindfulness. We resort to blameless ways of conduct. It's the third bhikkhu, whom they call one living on the path. Now, what is blamelessness? Blamelessness. So, in the Ananya Sutta, this Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha said, what is the happiness of blamelessness? How do we have this happiness when people do not blame us? Right? So in this called Ananya Sutta, the Buddha says, it is when a noble disciple has blameless conduct by way of body, speech, and mind. So when he reflects on this, he's filled with pleasure and happiness. So what is blameless conduct by way of body? By body would be the 3 unwholesome actions through body, which all of us recited or promised to observe, to abstain from killing or causing harm, to abstain from stealing or taking things that does not belong to us, and to abstain from sexual misconduct. Isn't it? That is through the body. So if we avoid these 3, right, then we can say we are blameless from body. What about speech? All right, I'm sure, again, you know speech. There are 4, isn't it? It's not just not lying, but it's also not been slanderous, it's not been idle gossip, it's not been harsh speech, and so on. So the Buddha was very specific, very, very clear on what constitutes a blameless speech. Okay? And of course, the mind. And what and how do we have a blameless mind? All right. So there are 3, isn't it? right? And the 3, what that means, we abstain from being covetousness, right? Covetousness. We abstain from hatred or anger or resentment or ill will, and we abstain from wrong views. All right. So wrong views plays a very important role. And in another discourse, which I think I discussed with many of you, maybe a year ago, called the 𝓀𝓵𝓪𝓷𝓵 Sutta, where the Buddha mentioned again these 10 unwholesome actions and the 10 wholesome actions. And in the 𝓀𝓵𝓪𝓷𝓵 Sutta, the Buddha said, whoever observe these 10 wholesome actions, the Kamapata, they are creating conditions for rebirth in the heavens, in the heavenly worlds. Right? So the Buddha again made it very clear. So blamelessness, right? So this is called the happiness of blamelessness. Right? So you want to read more, please read the Ananya Sutta, right? In the book of 4, right? Sutta 64. Right? So I leave you many of these titles of discourses, which I hope that at the end of our Sutta class, that you will, make reference to it, okay? Because they are very, very useful, yeah? Okay, so these are the, that's, okay, I have it here, the 𝓀𝓵𝓪𝓷𝓵 Sutta. So I'm not going to go through that, yeah? So it's mentioned there. So you can also read this 𝓀𝓵𝓪𝓷𝓵 Sutta. Now, what is interesting in the 𝓀𝓵𝓪𝓷𝓵 Sutta, if you still remember, or you have not gone through that session, is that section on wrong views, right? It's a very interesting thing which the Buddha mentioned about wrong views in the 𝓀𝓵𝓪𝓷𝓵 Sutta. So I'm going to skip that, right? We don't have time, it's already 3:30. Okay, verse 7. Having taken on the dress of the discipline, one who is brazen, a corrupter of families, impudent, hypocritical, uncontrolled, 𝓲𝓵, living as a dissembler, he is the defiler of the path. All right? Okay, so he's taken on the dress of the discipline. What do you mean by that? Today we are very familiar with this phrase, and he takes on the dress of the discipline, like we say, the bogus monks. Sometimes you see in the wet market or in the food court, people who dress as monks or sometimes even as nuns. All right, so this calls the dress of the discipline. They take on the dress of the discipline, but they are brazen. They are corrupter of families. They're impudent. They're hypocritical, uncontrolled, 𝓲𝓵. Right? They take on the attire of a bhikkhu, of a monk, or of a nun with their arms bowed. But when you want to offer food, they say, "No, I only want money." All right. So that's hypocritical, right? That's wrong, isn't it? So they abuse the alms bowl, which is for food, not for money. Okay. So he lives as a dissembler, right? He's a defiler of the path. So what happens to this type of people? The Buddha mentioned in the sutta called the discourse on the parable of the rattlesnake. Buddha says this is like someone, they catch a poisonous snake by the tail. What happens when you catch a poisonous snake? Just you catch a rattlesnake, a poisonous rattlesnake by the tail. The snake will turn around and bite you, right? So likewise, someone who learns the Dhamma, maybe is able to recite certain verses and then dress like a bhikkhu or a bhikkhuni, and then goes around to cheat other people, to spread a wrong message or wrong views. So they are like someone who catch a poisonous snake by the tail, and the snake is going to turn around and bite them. Okay, so when we see such people, what should we do? Should we have anger towards such people? Should we have hatred towards such people? No, I think what we should have compassion for such people. Feel sorry for them, because they are creating really negative karma, which they have to reap. Maybe not in this life, maybe in future lives. But if you really believe in the law of karma, they will suffer the consequences of their unwholesome actions of trying to cheat others, especially taking on the dress of the discipline. Okay, so that's the meaning of verse 7. So here, the definitions here, I think this commentaries here. I'm just giving you the explanation. Having taken on the dress of the discipline, having taken on the dress, That means having assumed the form of a monk, of the discipline. Who are the discipline? The Buddhas, the Pacceka Buddhas, the Arahants of good conduct. And then brazen, right? They are brazen. Brazen means what? Audacious. To take on ropes to conceal their immoral acts. Okay? And then they are also a corrupter of families. They corrupt the confidence in others, isn't it? Especially if you're a new Buddhist, right? And then you go to a food court, or you go to the food court and have your meal, and then you see these people coming, with the attire of a monk, and then behaving in a very in a very negative manner, then it kind of corrupts the confidence. In other words, you lose confidence, and you begin to ask, are all monks like that? Okay. Impudent, all right? You see the word impudent. So I've taken each of the Pali word and translated into English from the commentaries, taking on the dress. So impudent means improper bodily, verbal, and mental behavior of a monk. Hypocritical, he displays hypocrisy by concealing the evil he has done. He has done something that's negative. He tries to hide it. He doesn't want people to know. He tries to hide. So that's called hypocritical. He's uncontrolled. He's lacking control in good behavior through body, speech, and mind. I've not personally experienced it, but I've got Buddhist friends who said even when they offered food, for example, they will not offer money to the alms bowl. So when they offer food to the alms bowl, and they get scolded. My friend was my Dhamma friend was telling him he got scolded when he wanted to buy food and offer to the monk. The monk told him, I want money, I don't want food. Right? So he got scolded. So he's uncontrolled, lacking control in good behavior through speech, for example. All right. So such people, they send a very negative image. Shaft, what is shaft? Lacking inner substance, like shaft, like worthless. He's a useless person. All right. You look at them, yeah, it's useless. Living as a dissembler. He acts in a way for people to think he's a forest dweller or one with few desires. So he tries to impersonate, a holy man, but actually he's not. Okay. So in many of the Buddha's teachings, the discourses, the Buddha said, how do you know if a person is actually living the life of a true samana? He says, you can only know if you associate with him. You associate with him. When conditions for difficulties to arise, how did he react to difficulties? When conditions for him to get angry, how did he react? When conditions for greed to arise in him, how did he react? So the Buddha mentioned many of these occasions or guidelines, how we can know. So then we know that this person lived like a disassembler. Okay, finally, verse 8, when a householder who is learned, who is wise, a noble disciple has penetrated this, since he knows they are not all like him, on seeing such, he does not forsake his faith. For how could one equate them? The undefiled with the defiled, the pure with the impure. So here you see the Buddha is referring now to a householder. And who is the householder? Cunda. Right? All right? Cunda is householder. So the Buddha says if the householder is learned, if he is wise, he's a noble disciple, then he has penetrated all these things. Then what will arise in him? Faith will arise in him. Right? So what is faith? Faith is saddha, isn't it? Right? So in the Buddhist teachings, we talk about two types of faith. Right? Two types of faith. One is faith without roots. Roots, akar, without roots. And the other one is faith which has got roots, which has got strong roots. So the faith which has got no roots, faith in Pali is saddha, right? So the faith that has got no roots is called amulika saddha. Mula means roots. So amulika saddha. That means a faith which has got no roots. For example, we have some people who, when they come to temple, they say Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami. But they don't really understand. They don't really know what is the essence of the Buddha's teaching. And probably they have not even put the Buddha's teaching into practice. So that faith is very, very shallow. That faith has got no roots. All right. So the Buddha said that type of faith is called amulika saddha, faithless roots. Very easily you can pull it out, like the 𝓀𝓭𝓪 like that, you know, right? But you can easily pull it out. And then Buddha says we should have faith which is rooted in understanding, faith which is rooted in knowledge. And that type of faith rooted in practice, for example. That type of faith is strong faith. It's called akaravati saddha. So what all of us should try to cultivate is akaravati saddha, that type of faith. And how do we develop akaravati saddha? By listening to the Dhamma, by practicing the Dhamma, and by hopefully realizing the Dhamma. Now, when I say realizing, it does not mean that you realize and then you become an arahant. Realizing can actually mean that you realize that, yeah, you know, if I practice self-restraint, and when the conditions for anger to arise, I'm able to control my anger. That is a realization. Or when conditions for greed to arise, I'm now able to control my greed. I'm able to let go of that greed. That is a realization that has arisen. Right? So when that happens, then we reflect, the Buddha's teaching is correct. The Buddha's teaching is very meaningful. Then what happens is faith will arise. And when we recite the 5 precepts, we realize that, that's really something that we want and we will want to do. Okay, so faith is a very important thing. So in Buddhism, we say we start our practice with faith, but we end with wisdom. Right? So you must start with faith. That's why in the 5 spiritual faculties, isn't it? Right? The spiritual faculties, Satta is also one of the very important ones. Okay? So that is verse 8, and that's the last verse. So the last slide is prayer for 4 sublime states. So may all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be separated from happiness and be without suffering. And may all sentient beings be in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. So may all be well and happy. So if we have some time, if you have some questions or you have some comments, I'll be free to respond.
Okay, we are opening up the floor now.
Yes,
anyone has any questions?
Yes, please. Or any comments, you know. You can also type in your questions if you are.
Yeah, Brother Benny.
Yes, Brother Cole.
Yes,
yeah,
please.
You're talking about bogus monk. Actually, habitually, we know they are bogus monk, but we also tend to give some money to them when they come and ask for it. Now, by doing this, is it in any way that we, what I shall say, show to the others around that we are giving the impression that he is a genuine monk? Now, so do you think that we should just, the Buddhist monk when he come and ask for some donation?
Well, in the first place, if he's a monk, especially if he's a Theravada monk, he has no business to go around asking for money.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the first thing. Okay. If he follows the Theravada Vinaya, he has no business going around asking for money. Okay. If he's a real monk, he may come to you and say, okay, this temple where I'm staying, needs some support because maybe the roof is leaking or we got affected by the flood. And then he will tell you that, look, please donate to this temple. Or he'll probably bring a lay person along with him. But if he's just a monk or even a nun, especially in the Theravada robes, and he comes around and says, look, I would like you to make a donation, and we know that that's against his Vinaya. So with respect for the Vinaya, we also do not want him, especially in that robe, to break his Vinaya. So if we can talk to him, we said, look, I would like to support you. All right, I will support you with your requisites. right? Tell me, where do you stay, or how can I support you? You can give him some food. You can give him something to eat. That's fine, but you should not give him money.
So, Brother Benny, is perfectly all right that we can ignore them.
Well, you can ignore him, but don't ignore him with anger. Don't ignore him with aversion. For all you know, he may be actually properly ordained, and for whatever reason he decide to come out and see if we can get some support for his temple. We don't know. But what we are saying is that until and unless we really know, all right, we can help him in other ways, all right, where we know that it does not cause him to break his Vinaya. One of the things that we should remember as lay Buddhists is that the relationship between the laity and the Sangha is very important. If they wear the robes of a monk, it's our duty as lay people to understand what are their duties as a monk. And it's our duty not to create conditions for them to break their Vinaya rules. I think that's a very important point we must remember.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, so that's why we also need to understand the monks' Vinaya, not to find fault with the monks, but to know how we can support them in their practice. Okay, so we must
thank
have
you,
the possibility.
Brother Benny. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Brother Ko. Do we have any one from the floor who has any opinions or questions? No? Okay. If there isn't, then let us conclude today's session. Okay. Brother Benny, could you unshare your screen?
Sure.
Okay. A big thank you to Brother Benny for your fascinating insights into the Cunda Sutta today. We hope you all have gained much wisdom by listening to this Dhamma sharing today. We will share today's slides on the WhatsApp group later, so don't worry. Before we end, let us share the merits from today's session. Let's prepare ourselves again by relaxing the body, calm our minds, and free ourselves from distraction and be mindful of the present moment. Akasata cha bhumata dewa naga mahidika punyantam anumoditva chiram rakhantu lokasasanam chiram rakhantu desanam chiram rakhantu mamparam idam me nyatinam hontu sukita hontu nyatayo idam me nyatinam hontu sukita hontu nyatayo idam me nyatinam hontu sukita hontu nyatayo iminya punya kamena mame bala samagamo satam samagamo hotu yava nibbana patiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, and we'll see you all again next month. Be well and stay safe.
Sadhu, sadhu.